Nigeria is the world's biggest producer of cassava, or yuca. The root is a staple food here, made into fufu and garri. In some regions, it makes up as much as half of the calories eaten.
So it's at home in every part of Africa.
Cassava became so popular because it resists drought and pests. The root is calorie-rich, high in vitamin C, and can replace more expensive starches like wheat or rice. Experts say areas that grow cassava are less likely to endure famine. Today, cassava is finding growing markets in Europe, North America, and Asia, touted as a versatile gluten-free superfood. It can be turned into valuable exports like ethanol for biofuel, sweetener, and starches like tapioca for bubble tea. But most of the cassava Nigeria grows never leaves the country. So it could be missing out on billions in global trade. Challenges plague its entire supply chain, from farm to factory. For one, cassava needs to be processed in less than 48 hours, or it rots. But most processing plants are hundreds of miles from farms. As of 2015, the country had lost $600 million worth of cassava to spoilage. Entrepreneur Yemisi Iranloye says she's found a way to fix that. She launched a processing company called Sultry International and has since landed customers like Nestle and Unilever.
But now that we are turning into industrial use, there's high demand for the crop, so farmers can get good value for their crops.
So can Nigeria fix its supply chain enough to feed itself and cash in on a global export market? Cassava is a shrub with edible roots that's native to South America. The raw root can be poisonous. It actually has cyanide in it. But more than 4,000 years ago, indigenous people in the Amazon River basin discovered that grating, straining, and cooking cassava made it safe to eat. Portuguese colonizers first introduced cassava to Africa in the 16th century. Then, in the 1850s, when formerly enslaved Africans returned to Nigeria, they brought cassava cooking methods with them from Brazil. Europeans pushed the cultivation of cassava in Africa because it was hardy and could help prevent famine. During this time, new ways to cook the root sprung up across the continent. In Nigeria, they ground up and dried the cassava pulps into flakes, called garri. Because it's fermented, garri helped harvested cassava last longer. Over the centuries, the roots replaced native yams as the main food source across the continent.
Almost every family have cassava at their backyard to make garri or to make fufu, whether rich or poor.
Today, Nigeria produces more than 60 million tons a year. But experts say cassava farmers aren't growing it efficiently, so they take home just $1 a day.
You're farming on really small plots, so you're not getting the benefit of economies of scale.
Large-scale farmers usually grow more delicate crops, like corn, rice, or wheat, because they can be more profitable than cassava.
And they get a little bit more of a premium spot in the allocation of land.
The ones growing cassava often do it because they have no other choice. Cassava can handle acidic, poor-quality soil. It needs less fertilizer and water, and it's generally cheaper to grow. But because of uneven soil, machinery and tractors can't reach many cassava fields. And since they're harvesting by hand and growing seed varieties that don't produce as many roots, Nigerian cassava farmers have some of the worst yields in the world, meaning they harvest less of it per acre. But Yemisi believed she could change that. She spent years saving up money to open her own cassava processing business in 2005, Sultry International.
We started with 17 farmers. The youngest of them was about 55. Some of them have died now, blessed memory.
She grouped farmers so they could buy and cultivate more land together, like this nearly 500-acre farm.
Farmers have moved from 1 acre to about average of about 20 acres today.
She brought in Foluke Adeleke as a head of agriculture to introduce new, stronger cassava varieties onto her partner farms.
This ayaya is a new variety and it is known for its good starch content and it has a better yield. The roots are big, so you can see it's very big.
Yemisi has also been able to introduce tractors on some plots, speeding up harvest by 150%. Because these farms are harvesting more cassava, Yemisi can pay more. She cut out any middlemen and directly pays farmers nearly 4 times more than the open market. Now, farmers know how much they'll make off their crop before they even plant.
We've been able to move farmers from less than $1 a day in the last 10 years to about $10 a day today.
All of her efforts have gotten a lot of attention. Over the last 18 years, she's partnered with 10,000 farmers.
Out of which about 6,000 are men, about 4,000 are women.
After pulling up a load of massive roots, workers throw them onto trucks bound for Sultry's processing plant. 90% of the country's cassava is eaten locally, mostly as garri and fufu. Aderoju Adijat has been a garri producer since 1995. Every day, her factory processes 2 to 3 truckloads of cassava. Workers peel and wash the incoming roots. Then they grind, drain, press, and fry the cassava to make the garri's signature flakes. The peeled cassava has to be soaked for 3 days to make the staple side dish fufu. It's pounded, sieved, and drained before forming a paste. Fufu sells for 5 cents a piece. Yemisi, however, envisioned processing cassava into much more valuable products, like starch and sweetener. But she faced another big challenge: getting these roots to factories. Since cassava is almost 75% water, it's perishable and can spoil within just 48 hours of harvesting.
So it basically needs to be processed in some way almost immediately.
But most factories are near cities, down long roads in poor condition.
I saw farmers were traveling 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers, and before they get there, the crops are bad or trucks are broken down.
Until recently, 40% of cassava grown was lost to spoilage, and processing plants weren't working at capacity. So Yemisi tried something different.
So I decided to relocate the factory to a place that was near the farmers, even though far away from the customers.
Because once it's processed, cassava won't spoil as quickly. Today, Sultry handles 100 million kilos of cassava a year at factories like this one.
This is the area where the reception is done.
That's Ogubo Odegwa Florence, the plant manager.
The payloader that brings heaps of cassava drops it inside these silos.
The belt takes the cassava to the dry cleaner.
That removes some preliminary dirt, dust, sand.
A wet wash finishes the cleaning process.
And gets into the peeling machine so that further peels can be removed from the cassava.
Those peels will be used as animal feed. They're a cheaper alternative to corn feed. Then the crusher chops the cassava into smaller pieces. The final processed cassava starch or flour can be made into a number of products, from pastries, breads, noodles, seasoning for Nestle, and tapioca pearls for bubble tea. This is also the first sorbitol factory in all of Nigeria. The sweetener it creates can sell for over 10 times the price of raw cassava. Unilever uses Yemisi's sorbitol to make products like toothpaste and mouthwash.
Imagine how many we are in Nigeria or in Africa, and all the sorbitol imported into Africa come from Asia. And yet we almost brush our mouths every day, whether we are poor or rich.
While huge customers have helped Yemisi become one of the largest processors in the country, she hasn't been able to export much. She does ship her sorbitol internationally, but hasn't had luck exporting flour or starch, and she's not alone. Nigeria is the world's top cassava producer, but it's ranked 59th on the global list of exporters. In 2021, Thailand earned nearly $1.3 billion from exporting cassava, despite producing less than half as much as Nigeria. That same year, Nigeria earned just $1 million. It's not like the demand isn't there. The global market for sorbitol is expected to rise as more people turn to sugar-free products. Nigeria actually has to import 95% of its starch because demand outpaces production. Rising wheat prices due to the war in Ukraine have driven up interest in cassava flour. And then there's ethanol, a valuable biofuel, also used in beer and winemaking and pharmaceutical products. Some estimate cassava ethanol production alone could earn the country billions. But the final problem is adoption. Yes, cassava is an important food staple, but Yemisi says not enough Nigerians know that it can also be processed into lucrative export products. Now, the government has done things to help increase demand domestically, but experts say it needs to invest more to boost exports. And producers have told us they want more government support, like building better roads near farms and increasing investments in new cassava varieties. Because Yemisi thinks sultry is proving cassava investments can actually work.
I remember like 12 years ago, farmers will farm, they will have to call the cows to come and eat it up because nobody to buy. But now that we are turning into industrial use, there is high demand for the crop, so farmers can get good value for their crops.
If Nigeria can grow, process, and export more, it could tap the huge economic potential of cassava.
We grow the highest amount of cassava in the world. We are now ready to take our place at the global scene.